All right. Big smile. Welcome to the Levels of Lifting podcast. I'm your host, Lawrence, here to remind you that there's levels to this shit. I'm here with Coach Jen again.
Hello.
We have a lot of things to talk about.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't seen you in forever.
I know. My phone. Do you not want to hang out with me anymore?
Dude, I don't even like you, like, to be honest. You know, one of my favorite things to do, just like randomly, is when we're in the car together and then we do sad boy music. Will you indulge me real quick?
Okay.
I'm just going to start singing.
And Are you going to get copyright strike for
I don't
this?
know, and I don't care.
Okay, fine.
And just jump in, you know? Because we lost it all. Nothing lasts forever. Okay, that's enough. But I love that. Okay.
That's a good song.
You had a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
You just came back from level 2 coaching. You're continuing your education as a coach.
Correct.
And you are, how do you feel about it? What went on in that whole thing? Can you just talk about that real quick?
So this past weekend, I was in Costa Mesa, California, SoCal, at SoCal Weightlifting, which is funny because our entire team, well, a big part of our team was just there competing at one of their meets, the Spring Classic, like 2 weeks ago, which I actually wasn't at, but then I had a chance to go out there this past weekend for the USA Weightlifting Level 2 coaching course. So it is a 2-day course. It's, basically continuing education for coaches. So they have their level 1, which is sort of basic, how to teach the Olympic lifts. They have their framework of how to break down the lifts and the progressions they use. And then level 2 is more focused on the coaching aspect of it. So working through technique corrections, errors, cues, and then a big section on programming, which was really cool. And then a little bit of work on competition coaching. So it was really cool to be there, especially because I took my L1 basically like more than 10 years ago. I think it was like 2012. I took my level 1 back when I lived in Hawaii. And I also got to audit a level 1 a few years later. That was taught by Harvey Newton, who's kind of like a old guard weightlifting coach back in the day.
You didn't tell me that.
Did I not tell you that?
Who's Harvey Newton?
Is he
a well-known guy?
Yeah,
no disrespect
coach.
to you.
Yeah, weightlifting coach.
Mr. Newton.
But, So, it was cool to do my L2. It was interesting because there were a lot of people there who had like recently taken their L1 and then kind of jumping right into L2.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And for me, it was like more than 10 years apart. And so it was cool to be with people who are a little bit newer in the sport, a little bit newer to coaching. To be honest, like, I feel like I'm very lucky in that I've been able to work for Billy and learn from him, because a lot of the stuff, the majority of the stuff that I learned over the weekend, I've had exposure to just from working with Billy and also from working with our athletes on the floor. So a lot of the technical analysis and stuff like that was, I could draw a lot from my own experience. I feel very lucky. It made me feel grateful that I have had the experience to work and learn from Billy, because he's taught me so much that, it's essentially as much of the value, if not more, of the level 2, just like being able to be mentored by him and also be able to work with athletes every single day. Right. That's been a big teaching component for me. So, it was really cool to meet other people in the space. Cool to have Chris Amenta, who's the head coach at SoCal. He's the one who taught the course, did a great job. It was cool to be in the SoCal gym. It was a fun weekend all around. It was long. Both days were like 8 to 5, which...
Did you go to the beach?
I did go to the beach, briefly. I wish I could have gone for longer. We went to Newport Beach for
Was it good weather?
It was okay. It was a little cold. Like cold for beach weather. Like probably fine if you were not at the beach, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have beach food?
Beach food. We did have margaritas.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it was fun. The programming stuff was very valuable because that's the stuff that I'm maybe a little bit less versed on. So I got a lot of good information there.
Give us something that you might think, or maybe someone might not know that they could just like a useful nugget from that programming that you learned?
Sure.
Anything that just stands out to you?
I mean, I think in terms of the programming, just and this also could be because Chris is very like well-rounded in the programming aspect, so it could be more of Chris and maybe less of USA Weightlifting.
Okay.
But just the framework of how to structure programs, macrocycles, mesocycles, microcycles, and then how to structure those, and laying down like a groundwork. That was like maybe the biggest nugget that I got from the course. Yeah.
Does it start with strength, slowly become more specific to weightlifting? Because I'm going to guess that the programming is
Sure.
Olympic weightlifting.
Yeah, exactly. It depends on
The athlete?
the athlete.
Got it.
It depends on where they're at in their competition like cycle. So there might be times where you're focused more on GPP, like general physical preparedness, more fitness, muscle endurance, strength endurance type
And how
stuff.
far away do they talk about specific exercises? Like how far away from weightlifting does that go, that GPP?
Not really, because ultimately it's about specificity.
Got it.
Like that's the main thing is snatch and clean and jerk, right? But when you structure a program, you have to look at the entire year. It's not like you're always having your athletes only snatch, only clean and jerk.
So they're looking, is it being taught for an entire year of training? Is that
at least that's the way that Chris helped us look at it, was like an entire year. Yeah, like laid out from like competition to competition.
And is the snatch and clean and jerk ever dropped?
No,
Never.
never.
Got it.
Yeah.
So whatever USAW teaches, or Chris, I don't know what the mixture is or
Sure.
percentage. There's never let's just get strong. Snatch or back squat deadlift. We take it as far as
Without
possible.
snatch and clean and jerk, no.
Okay.
No. Strength is always going to involve the classic lifts, especially because of the specificity required for our sport.
How about bench?
No.
No bench at all?
No bench.
Got it.
Oh my God, have you ever had like a weightlifting?
I keep bench in my cycle, yeah.
But is that just for you, for fun?
I do want to...
You find it mentally stimulating.
I like benching. So
Yeah.
I feel like it doesn't really hinder my growth in Olympic weightlifting.
But do you think that it's beneficial?
I think if you don't have a press out problem, I'll go the other way. If you do have a press out problem, you should not bench because it's probably gonna exacerbate the problem even
Sure.
more. Or if like even a slow push presser, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't even recommend. So if you are really good at the top and doing this,
Sure, yeah.
I wouldn't even recommend that you push
That
press,
makes
that you
sense.
do push press. But if you don't have a lockout issue at all,
Yeah.
I think it's fine to see how much weight you can hold and how much you can bench.
I guess.
The only thing that really will hinder you is if you have mobility issues.
Yeah.
So lockout, and if you have mobility
Right.
restrictions. If your mobility actually gets worse, then you shouldn't bench.
Yeah, I agree with
But
you.
I don't ever like throw a workout away completely.
Sure.
I feel like there's a place for stuff.
Yeah. Well, and I think you would have to also consider, like I said, the psychological component of it. If it's an exercise that an athlete looks forward to or likes doing, that's going to get them motivated to train, then there would be some benefit to include it in your training. You know, that's also one thing. Maybe if you're talking about knowledge nuggets, is to
Knowledge nuggets.
You just
I
said
want chicken nuggets so bad. Go ahead.
I know
go ahead.
you said you were going to, and then
Yeah.
I stopped you. Sorry.
I said go ahead.
Okay. That you have to consider the athlete as a whole. Chris talked about like athlete types in weightlifting, and like when you're a coach, you have to deal with a lot of different personalities, and you can't just say like if you have a personality that maybe you're not used to, you can't just say like, oh, this person's not for me. Sure, there's got to be like, personality differences, and people maybe don't respond to other people. But I think as a coach, you're going to come across all kinds of people. So it would behoove you to learn about how to work with different types of athletes, and then also to consider the mental, psychological, emotional components of of an athlete and what it takes to be, successful as an athlete. So I think with coaching, you have to consider who your athlete is. It's not just numbers on a paper. It's not just percentages, right? It's not just percentages. It's not just sets and reps. It's a whole entire person that we have to consider. Lifestyle factors, job, relationships, all that stuff factors into an athlete and how successful they can be.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And as a coach, you got to learn how to pivot based on the needs of the athlete.
Yeah.
Was there any psychological things talked about?
Yeah, so I think this one was interesting. He talked about, so I don't know what the source material is, so forgive me, but he talks about the breakdown of athletes into 3 different types, and there's not one that's like better or worse than the other. Like there might be some negative connotations to some, but it's not like it's better to be one type of athlete versus another one. But there was Zen, Fragile, and Meathead. Zen, Fragile, and
Can
Meathead.
I guess what each of them are?
Please.
Zen.
Yeah.
It's John.
He's
just calm, stoic,
Yeah.
nothing really bothers him.
Sure.
If something happens, it just happens. It is what it is. There's no negative or positive thing to it. It's just, what can we do better?
Yeah.
Zen, am I somewhere
absolutely.
on the right track?
Yeah.
Zen. Okay, what's on the next one?
Fragile.
I'm not going to name names. Okay, Fragile. Someone that whenever, and I'll keep it weightlifting specific, if there's a missed lift, then they'll search for a lot of negative meanings in it and say, I suck, or shoot, I don't think in that way, so it's actually kind of difficult for me to...
Well, you could say that maybe they just have more emotional responses to the lifting.
Okay. Yeah.
There's more
attachment, negative attachment to it.
Not necessarily negative attachment.
Okay.
I mean, it can also be positive.
Can they be super excited about a lift? And
absolutely.
There's
just more emotion connected to...
I like the idea of thinking like fragile can also be in the positive direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because being, like Billy says, like, don't celebrate too early.
Right.
Because that can mess up your next lift.
Right.
So that's something interesting to consider.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting to consider as a coach, if you have a fragile athlete that you need to pull something out of them, then you can give them something that they're going to get excited about. Kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Like, say, for example, you're in competition.
Exercise?
Yeah, or like you're in competition and you like have to give them a weight that they're excited by, otherwise they're not going to care and they're not going to try. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know if that's necessarily the same as fragile, but I just, in my head, that maybe makes sense to me that those two things would be connected.
I like emotional, positive or negative.
Yeah.
You can go either way.
Yeah.
So does that
sure, yes.
cover the basis?
Yes.
And then a meathead.
Is that you?
I'm not going to say any names. No, I feel like I'm not.
You're not a meathead?
No. What am I?
You're kind of a meathead.
Okay,
so what the interesting thing is, Chris said that there's also combinations. So it's not just one person is like flat out one thing. You can have elements of all of them, obviously.
Am I all things?
I think you're mostly a meathead with a little bit of zen.
It sounds like an order in Sonic. Okay, what is a meathead?
Meathead, yeah. So just, they're just like, put it on the bar, let me do it, like, let's go. They are just very like, yep, this is what we're going to do. Very straightforward, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think, and I'll have to look back at my notes and see where the source material is for this, because I would love to read up more on this, just in my own, process of getting to create relationships a little bit better. Because the thing that has been really interesting for me about coaching is, one, learning the technical corrections and stuff like that, but the biggest thing has been learning how to work with people and behavior modification, how to get people to do certain things, or how to connect with people. That's been the really interesting component to me of coaching.
I mean, it's all communication.
Yeah it's that's also one of the things that was interesting about this weekend is there were a lot of newer people there who are maybe
how old? Is you talking about newer in age
newer,
too, and newer to the sport?
I mean, there weren't that people that were that young, maybe in their 20s,
Got
you
it.
know, but like newer to weightlifting and newer to coaching.
Were there a lot of Asians? I don't know why, but for some reason I feel like there's an Asian wave happening.
Yeah.
There were?
There
it
were
could be Cali too.
A fair amount of Asian people, yes.
Do they look like me?
No.
Okay. I don't know if that's good or bad, but continue.
What was I even talking about? You
I
distracted
don't
me
know.
with the Asian thing.
You need to focus.
Oh my God.
We're talking about communication.
I do need to focus. I noticed that today when I was lifting. You know what I did today, and I normally don't do, but I was like really into this audiobook I was listening to, and I was alone in the gym training by myself in the middle of the day, and so I had one earbud in and I was listening to the book.
I love doing that, by the way.
You like it?
I
mean,
love listening.
Liked it.
I prefer to listen to a podcast or an audiobook and lift rather than music, but continue.
Yeah, so I mean, I liked it, but I think there was like one set where I was just like so like focused on what I was listening to that I was like, what am I even doing? Like I got really distracted. Yeah. So I think there's going to be a fine balance there between, you know, lifting and like listening to something.
I want to go back to the level 2 thing.
Yes.
But since you're talking about like focus, lifting, and balance, I want to go back to visualization.
Yeah.
Because some people have reached out to me and said, wow, this thing is interesting, like the different perspectives that you could visualize.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our last podcast, and even my podcast with Janessa, I just told her, like, I don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But reading Confident Mind by Dr. Zinser.
Nate Zinser.
Yes. Because I finally got to the chapter where they were talking about visualization. It's pretty heavy on it, and I didn't think that they were going to go that deep into it. But it's probably been the most game-changing thing that I've added to my weightlifting.
That's cool, dude.
It's so interesting to me because they talk about in the book really placing yourself into that not mindset, but just placing yourself in that activity.
Mm-hmm.
Like what's the smell? Like what is the things you're looking at? Like what does the barbell feel? I mean, they don't talk about weightlifting specifically, but obviously I was thinking of weightlifting examples. Are you going to chalk up? Where's your feet at? You know, what perspective are you looking through? Mm-hmm. And they said that the best perspective to really be in is first person.
Sure.
But I mean, for weightlifting, yes, I actually visualize now 2 perspectives. I do visualize the first person. I visualize, I don't know, like if you can visualize this, but it's like the feeling of the next lift, because I visualize whole sessions, because I'll visualize me in the first person and the setup is the most important part to me. If I can get the setup right, then I feel like I already made the lift. So I visualize that, and then I visualize my camera angle, which is usually the best coaching angle.
Like front third. Yeah,
front third or back third. Usually, I mean, because it just depends where I put my camera.
Sure.
Where I think like it would be optimal to like see a made lift. So interestingly enough, I not only do that for like a main like I told you, I envision myself snatching all the way to 120. My best snatch is like, even right now it's not even 100. But I mean, it just made it more realistic, because you do have to believe it prior to even getting close to attempting it, because you're never going to get close to it if you don't even believe you're going to get there.
Right.
So that was interesting that I went through a whole entire workout, but now I also visualize the rep happening. I think it's really important to visualize the next rep. For example, I was doing jerks and sometimes out of the rack, and sometimes that next weight is very surprising in your rack position, and it's like sometimes, I mean, for me in particular, I get stars, and then like I do come close to blacking out sometimes, and I have to just drop the rep or the bar. But I visualize like, and just I guess it's a reminder to myself that hey, this next attempt has more weight on it. Right. It's going to feel heavier. Yeah. So accept it. Right. And whenever I visualize me actually doing it with more weight on and just thinking like, well, what would that feel like? Whenever I actually did my next rep, like, it was so much easier. Like
Yeah.
I was prepared for that feeling already.
Right.
So that's something interesting that's like happening now. That
That's cool.
But I'm also wondering, how far do I take that? Do I take that all the way to like my last attempt in competition? Do I want to visualize it actually happening right prior to me? I mean, yes, I'm going to visualize even before the competition.
Mm-hmm.
But on my last attempt, am I going to close my eyes and think about everything and then walk up to the platform? I probably will.
Yeah.
But I sometimes think like, do you want to put too much thought into this? Because one, all the work's already done. You should already be automatic
Mm-hmm.
with everything, like a flow state.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I haven't got to the competition platform yet with this
Yeah.
new thing that I'm trying, but I think I will do it.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to see because you're going to do AO2,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I just signed up for that.
So that will be really interesting. It will be a fun experiment, for sure. That's how I felt at Masters Nationals when I was visualizing. I was like, okay, I'm just going to run this experiment. And ultimately, it was successful.
Did you
know?
do the visualization right prior to your last attempt, like up there on the stage?
Yeah,
Oh,
even
interesting.
before I touched the bar, like, so I did it while I was chalking my hands. I did it in the back room, like in the staging area when I was sitting down. I did it when I walked up on the stage, chalked my hands, and then I even did it while I was on the platform before I set up. So I think what happens is, like, in your mind, you might think that, oh, I must be taking a whole lot of time doing this. Like, that's just way too much time. But then when I watch the video of myself, especially on my last snatch, I see myself doing that, and I notice, like, oh, that's when I was visualizing. But it's actually, it goes by so fast. Like, it's not actually that much time that you're up there doing that. So it was really just a moment where I, like, closed my eyes. And the biggest thing that I visualized, because I think to visualize every little piece or phase of the lift would be maybe too much complicated, because
I do like zone in and focus on particular things.
Well, I think maybe in that context, like if you're in competition, you've already done the work. You know, you've already done all the technical work and the strength work and stuff. The biggest thing was just visualizing the end result.
Okay.
So I think that might be helpful. Maybe you can try that rather than having to think about every single part of the lift or whatever. Just think about the end result of, like, okay, I'm with my arms overhead, they're locked out, I'm standing up, I feel the success of a made lift, you know, like that sort of stuff. I think that might be a good focal point, especially if you're in a condensed, like, shortened amount of time where you're doing it, like, literally on the platform before you address the bar.
Yeah, you're fucking 10 seconds 10 seconds left and you're visualizing. You're up there for 20 seconds.
Coach is like, no!
Hey, that's 3 reds. Get off.
Oh my god. That would be wild.
Oh, man.
Well, that's cool, though. I'm glad that you're getting... Don't you feel like... So before we started talking about any of this visualization stuff, you were like, oh, I don't do that. I don't know how to do that. But don't you think after some practice, you've now developed the skill to do that?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Here's something interesting. I know I've been, I don't care anymore if you do it or don't, but the sauna, I've been talking about it
Yeah.
a lot. And honestly, without even, what I'm going to get into, you kind of see how it all ties in. Whenever you do something hard and uncomfortable, your mind forgets things. Can you relate to that?
What do you mean? Can you...
Whenever there's a new person and they're trying to learn the lifts, like you're coaching a one-on-one,
Yeah.
and then you add, like, they got it, like, with the PVC pipe. They got it with, like, the training bar.
Right.
The moment you add in a little bit more weight, and now there's a sense of, like, this is heavy and this is uncomfortable. They start to forget, like, the cues and the things that they had already done.
Sure.
So that uncomfortability fogs your mind.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Oh, 100%.
So I try to run the whole visualization thing in the sauna. I can't do it to a certain weight because once I get so uncomfortable, I cannot think.
Interesting. Yeah.
So it's just an interesting thing that I'm not really going anywhere with this, but
Sure. It's almost like a challenge in, like, mental fortitude. Like,
Yeah.
How much?
Well,
much
I
can
think it
focus
does
when I'm
relate
uncomfortable?
to the weight.
Yeah.
Because when it's heavy, people still forget
Oh
stuff.
my gosh. So I talk about this all the time, especially in the first pull, because the first pull is just a highly uncomfortable position.
Yes.
It's you're over the bar, your legs are loaded, your back is loaded. That's when you feel the weight the most. That's when it feels heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such an uncomfortable position, especially with heavy weight, to maintain that position, that people just they just start, whatever. All this, the weightlifting stuff we talk about. They just start bringing their hips up too soon. They start opening their torso up too early. Like their weight starts shifting back in their heels, like all this stuff that happens because it's a highly uncomfortable position. But I'm just so convinced that if you can be disciplined in that first pull and be disciplined with the discomfort that your body is feeling in that first pull, then once you get to the knee, then it's like, that's when all the good stuff starts to happen, right? And that's where you can really apply the power and speed. And it's just people don't want to stay disciplined in that first pull. And even in training too, it's that first pull is so boring to train because it's not going anywhere. It's just that a few inches off the floor.
Yeah.
But the more I spend time with it, the more I'm just convinced, like, if people could just get comfortable with being uncomfortable in that first pull, then they have a higher likelihood of being successful with the lift. I feel like I've said this same exact thing on your podcast, maybe.
Maybe, but it wasn't related to like the uncomfortability and like brain fog that happens, or like I can even relate this to like being in law enforcement, having worked in it. Once a high tension situation happens, and that's why they say like we don't fall back on like some type of perceived dream or greatness of like something successful. We fall back on our training.
Sure.
Like you're not gonna make the best decision, but whenever you start thinking of like, or whenever you put in a high pressure situation, you fall back on your training.
Yeah.
So like some people, like if you, let's just say it's a fight, and it's happening to you. There's certain things that you're supposed to do, but because like this tension just happened and it's in your face and you feel uncomfortable, some people freak out, and then they don't know like to get on the radio to notify someone. They don't know to like, hey, we gotta back up because I'm the only one here, like we're not gonna just go to the most deadliest option and then really bad things happen. You could have like mitigated the situation, but because you're here in this really uncomfortable state, you just forget. Like they call it tunnel vision.
Huh. Interesting.
So maybe that heaviness off the floor is tunnel vision.
Yeah, totally.
And then just like, I gotta rush through this and I gotta get over it because this is uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. That makes sense. Like,
it's kind of like a fight or flight situation.
Yeah, in high stress situation, that makes sense that you would do that. But I like that concept of you fall back on your training because...
No, you should, but people, like, it takes a lot of training.
Yeah.
And a lot of time, like... And you got to be intentional. Some people are not intentional.
Yeah. With their training? Are you talking about weightlifting?
With their training and, like, the way, like, their mental model for, like, oh, if I feel this way... Am I going to rush through it, or am I going to remember, hey, it's supposed to feel this way?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I really like Billy programs a lot of, like, pauses off the floor and, like, stuff like that. And I like that because it's, like, spending so much time in a place where you have to you basically have to talk yourself down, you know?
You're forced into that position.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk, this wasn't on my list of things to talk about, but I was just so excited about this. It's very rare that we've been doing this for a long time.
Sure.
Years, right? Decade. But it's very rare that I run into like these new nuggets of information that like, chicken nuggets. I'm so hungry. Knowledge nuggets. It's very rare that I run into these new pieces of information that really advance like me as an athlete and really push like the boundaries of like where I can go. Mm-hmm. So for Billy, I'll just drop a couple. For Billy, it's been the straight-legged snatches.
Sure.
Because I had no extension.
Yeah.
When I got here, so I was like, right.
Yeah.
I was getting to fucking national. I was getting to nationals, and I was able to like do that without having an extension.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy, right?
That is wild, yeah.
2, and I guess I could just go into it. It's the pauses.
Yeah.
It's a pause at the knees. Or not pause at the knees, pause at 1 inch.
Yeah, pause.
Because I had no idea what the purpose of that was. So like everyone else, I ripped it off the ground to about, halfway, pretty close to my knee, which is like not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to build the tension and barely get, if you can get even smaller than 1 inch, that's ideal.
The way I describe it is, as soon as your bar breaks the floor, the plates break off the floor, I should barely be able to slip a piece of paper underneath your plate.
Right.
That's how close to the floor it should be.
And that's how it should be done.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, there is benefits. I don't even want to get into it too much, but you just pausing at that height,
sure,
just really low, there's a lot of benefits to it. Mm-hmm. But you have to, like, I had to think pretty deeply of what the purpose of that was. Because to me, we gotta be explosive at all times. I gotta rip that weight off the floor, because the more speed that I can get off the floor, the more speed I can put on it whenever it hits my hips, right? It's just a very meathead, just like gritty attitude about weightlifting. And it worked. Like, it worked.
Sure.
But thinking about, like, taking the slack out, finding better positions, and I've come across the word wedge yourself.
Yeah, he does use that term a lot.
He uses that?
Yeah.
Dude, I just
wedging
okay.
yourself.
So the only reason that I'm gonna bring this up, so I like sumo deadlifting and I like bench. So I just try to keep it in,
Sure.
Sometimes I run a couple cycles and they're not in there at all. But I want to be really good at sumo deadlifting for whatever reason, right? The hardest part about sumo deadlifting is breaking the weight off the ground. Mm-hmm. But you have to have good posture.
Yeah.
And when I first got here, and I did it for like a year still, or maybe even longer, I would like break the weight off the ground real quick. Like, I'll just yank it off the ground just to feel how heavy it is, so that I can set my position. That was my thought process. Because I believe that I'm explosive enough to pull myself out of position. Like, I can pull this weight super hard, but then I'm not going to be in the right position.
Right.
So I was like, I mean, that's what I really want to do when I sumo deadlift, but I'm in such a terrible position to do that. Yeah. I just can't.
Yeah.
Right? So something that, like, and I was looking at like other people's form, and I was asking my brother, because he does sumo deadlift. He does it pretty well. Yeah. And I just came across the word of wedging yourself in there. Get as close as possible and set your position. So whenever I do, and this is going to get back to weightlifting, it'll come first full circle. So when I do my setup, I notice a lot of people already almost break the floor once they're in the correct position. Like, the weight is coming off. And then one of the big things that you do, like, to increase your sumo deadlift, is to do 1 inch pauses. So I'm like, wait a second. Wedging yourself in there, and actually the moment that you set your position, the weight is breaking out the floor. Let me just try that on my snatch. So as soon as I set myself, you might not have seen it, or basically it looks like I'm 1 inch snatching or 1 inch cleaning everything. So John even told me, like, off the blocks the other day, he was like you're 1 inch pausing everything. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to wedge myself, and it's really confusing to explain it without me doing like a long form conversation. Yeah. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, trying to say, like, well, I'm just imagining I'm in between the earth and the barbell. He's like you're a little person and you're like pushing it up. And I was like, yeah, kind of. Yeah. So I was waited all day to ask Billy about this. Yeah. Like I wanted to know, like, what do you think about this? Is this something that I should explore or keep doing? And he loves it. Yeah. Like, I even demonstrated like my sumo deadlift and everything. And I was like, okay, so what if I just add it? Like, as soon as my position's set, that weight is basically broken off the floor, and then I can go. And he loves it. Yeah,
I mean, that makes sense. I think I overheard him talking to someone a little bit newer about start position, and he used that exact word, like wedging yourself in there. You wedge yourself into the bar. you gave him that term. Yeah. That's
So, I mean, I wasn't supposed to go to that, or I wasn't planning to talk about that, but something that's exciting to me. That's
cool.
So, even on my snatch deadlifts, I'm like, they're so heavy. Like, they're like 130, 140, 150. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, I'm just going to try to just set myself, and then hopefully it comes off the ground. If it doesn't come off the ground, then I'm like, maybe it's too heavy.
Well, it makes sense if you're really wedging yourself in there. You have like leverage against the bar.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
Versus,
there's
like,
all the tension is there. It's
yeah.
not going from zero.
Versus the idea of like pulling, you know? Like we use the terms like pulling in weightlifting because that's just the terminology. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's just semantics. I feel like wedging or pushing is like a way better concept to actually understand what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like really good. It's a really good way to build tension between you and the barbell.
Yeah.
That way you're not just gripping and ripping.
For sure. Yeah, I like that. That's cool. It's neat that you can still make sort of, you know, have technical like light bulb moments, even as experienced as you are, you know, like being able to have an aha moment.
I feel like I've reached my talent level, and I need to do other things to be. I'm not going to get more talented. I'm not going to get genetically better. So I just need to be extremely efficient with what I have.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's like, it makes me really happy when I find these moments.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
Tell me your favorite memory in weightlifting.
My favorite memory?
An achievement that you've done. Let's not memory. Let's go achievement.
Honestly,
and describe it to me.
Well, I think maybe because it was just the most recent thing that happened was that 65 kilo snatch at Masters Nationals. So that was tying my all-time best snatch that I've only ever snatched twice before. The first time was like in my 20s, and then the second time was in comp prep.
So that's really fresh. So
Yeah.
I will believe you whenever I ask the next question.
Yeah.
So can you go farther back?
Yeah. Let's see.
So like something that you're really excited about, like years ago.
There was probably my best clean and jerk ever was in competition, at a local meet in Portland. And yeah, that I remember that moment. It's funny that we talk about visualization because I think I don't have as much of a memory of myself experiencing it as I do of the video of me that my friend had taken because she was watching me that day, of that snatch, it's not snatch, the clean and jerk. It was an 80 kilo clean and jerk, and that's the only time I've ever hit that. And the memory is like of my friend like screaming, and then the camera just being like all shaky because she was like
that's
jumping
what you
up and
remember.
down. Yes.
I'm starting to think that your memories are not really your memories, and they're just the stories that you tell yourself.
Oh my God, yeah. You want to talk about that sort of stuff? Yes, 100%.
Because do you really remember, like, you're chalking up?
Right.
Do you remember, like, did you carb load for that? Like, what'd you eat right before?
Right. Is that even real? Did it even really happen if you have no, like, clear memory of it? I mean, I get that, like, memory is a thing, but, like, and things actually do happen, but, like, your perception, because your memory is always your perception of the event, right? So it's always going to be colored by your experience, your, like, your upbringing, your personality. That's going to color the way that you look at that memory, right? Like, did you ever see Inside Out? It was a Pixar movie with, like,
maybe. Can you describe it?
Yeah, so that Pixar movie where it's about these, like, emotions inside a girl. She's like a preteen girl, and there are these emotions that are inside her brain, and they kind of, like,
keep talking. I gotta plug this something in.
Yeah.
They're inside her brain.
They're inside her brain.
Wait, isn't that like a new one?
Well, there's supposed to be a sequel. So for those of you who don't know, Inside Out, it's a Pixar movie, Disney Pixar movie, and it takes place inside this girl's brain, and it basically has different characters that represent her emotions. So joy, sadness, disgust, fear,
yeah, there's definitely
anger.
a new trailer for that coming out.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. But basically, at the end of the movie, so there's this whole story about her losing her core memories, yada yada. I don't want to get into it. But essentially, the character of Joy finds out at the end that, like, her memories, her joyful memories, some of them couldn't exist without sadness. You know, so that the emotion of sadness, like, colored the memory in order for her to be able to experience joy. And I know that's a very convoluted way to, like, talk about that. But basically, I think the example was like she had lost a hockey game or something, and so she was really sad because she had lost this hockey game. So when she's thinking back to this memory, it's this sad memory for her of her losing this of this hockey game. But then I think her parents or her friends come around and they like cheer her up, and then the memory switches into a happy one. So she couldn't have experienced that memory as being happy, like of her family and her friends like coming around her to like cheer her up and make her feel better. She couldn't have experienced that without first having felt the sadness. So I know this is a really like sort of distant like connection to what you're talking about, but I feel like we remember emotions. Like our emotions are very much like, you know, a physical experience, and so our emotions then inform how we remember something, because we won't necessarily remember exactly what happened, but we'll remember how we felt, you know?
Yeah, we're getting really far and I love it. But it's just, this is so interesting to me, like as far as memories, because I listened to this one dude I really admire. I won't say his name right now, but he was saying that like none of your memories matter.
Yeah.
Basically. And you're gonna forget them.
Right.
And you're more likely, it's funny that you said it, you're more likely to remember the video of it happening.
Sure.
Rather than the actual thing happening.
Or if you do have a memory, it's the memory of how you feel or how you felt when that thing happened.
And that's why I asked you, is that just a story that you tell yourself?
Sure, yeah.
And why is it important to tell yourself positive stories?
Why wouldn't you want to? Why would you?
Well, clearly a lot of people tell themselves negative stories.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I think, if your behavior is influenced by your attitude and your attitude is influenced by your emotions, why wouldn't you want to tell yourself positive stories to elicit positive emotions versus telling yourself negative stories to elicit negative emotions?
So, a fragile athlete is probably an athlete that tells themselves a negative story?
Maybe. I don't want to designate. Yeah, I don't want to designate like fragile athletes as that having a negative connotation. I think it's just like a framework to be able to understand a certain type of personality. But I mean, you could consider someone who maybe is having trouble with their training or whatever, maybe having trouble in competition, that they're at the mercy of the stories that they've told themselves over and over and over again. You know?
Yeah. I really hate it whenever you say, isn't that the story that you tell yourself? That fucking pisses me off.
I know it does. I mean, it pisses me off too, because it's like, what can you really say? Because it's true.
I'll say, what will I say? I'll say like, my training really sucked today.
Yeah. And
then she'll be like, did it really suck, or is that the story that you're telling yourself? And then it forces me to say, it makes me have to be more specific. Yeah, my movement was not as optimal due to my fatigue and lack of sleep.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm just like, ugh. It's so much easier to say, my training sucked today.
Yeah. Well, I think also it's learning how to separate the emotion from the reality of what's actually happening. Because in your mind, you could have the perception that your training was shitty, but if you were watching yourself from the outside, or if you had a coach there watching you, they could be like, looks fine, right? That's why I feel like I've tried to separate those two, that it doesn't really matter how, well, we've talked about this before, it doesn't matter how anything feels versus it matters how it's moving. It could have been moving shitty that day, so in your assessment of, oh, my training was shitty, that could have been correct if you were actually moving shitty. But if you were moving fine, but you internally felt shitty, then, those two aren't really aligning.
I feel like the trigger word for that response is the word feels.
Yeah.
So if I said, I feel like I'm on fire and I'm physically on fire,
yeah,
you would say, Or is that the story that you're telling yourself?
Yeah.
You wouldn't like grab a fire hydrant or what is that? Fire extinguisher and fucking put me out.
Yeah.
You're like, that's just the
That's
story.
Just you're telling yourself that you're on fire. Is that reality?
Oh man, I just want to fucking sock you in your face. Just kidding. Okay.
Don't you think that perspective makes you better though?
That if you tell yourself a positive story.
That and also that like separating the feeling of something versus the reality.
It's true, but I mean, like, shoot, man, you're gonna lose friends if you keep saying that to people.
I know.
Like, I feel like.
Well, if you disagree with me, then I don't want to be your friend.
Oh, she said it. No, I love it. Sometimes I think about that, like the importance of like weeding out negative influences. Well, that's a real thing.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all programmed from a variety of sources, like our upbringing, our childhood, our parents, society, television, Instagram, social media, and also the people you're around. So friends, family members, training partners. If you're around someone who is, like, I don't even want to call it like toxic. It's like, I think that if you're around someone who is negative, you're listening to all those negative stories all the time, then that becomes the story and the audio that plays in your head is all those negative stories too. Even if you're not consciously doing it, that's what's happening. Yeah.
I mean, it goes the other way. You want to hang out with really cool people.
Yeah, for sure.
Because probably you be more likely to do cool stuff.
Yeah. That's why I like you.
I love you too.
Well, no, I appreciate that you're excited about life, you're passionate, you have drive, you're always lifting other people up. You very rarely complain. Like, in the instance, maybe, like, oh, my training was shitty, but that's, like, sure, is there something we could improve upon, like, changing that story? Yeah, absolutely. But for the most part, you're a very positive person, you're supportive, and, like, that's good to be around,
So I am changing my story as far as, a lot of my, like, programming is changing lately. As far as, like, I am becoming more existential. I really am. Like a lot of things don't really matter at all. But I'm not existential to this point of, like, let's not do anything.
Like apathy,
Can you explain that?
Well, I think I've gotten to the point of being existential to the point of apathy, where I've gotten so existential where it's like nothing matters, then why do anything at all? And I've gotten to that point, and it's not great, and it's taken me actually a few years to get myself out of it. Like, I was just, it was really depressing.
I'm going the other way. Nothing matters, so why not make it fucking awesome?
Yeah, correct. I like that perspective a lot more, but I had to get myself there. Yeah. It took me a few years.
But I'm willing to take a lot of risk. Like, I mean, I'm in a position, and I place myself in a position where I could take a lot of risk anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to, like, just go big.
Yeah.
Man, I had something to say, but it's escaping me now. The way I think, like, the story that I tell myself, as far as, like, a lot of things we talk about is training. So last week, and I told you that I'm going really heavy off my percentages. Did I tell you that?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to back off because I'm super fatigued. And I think it's the best move. Sure. And I think it was important for me to do that so that I could find my ceiling. But basically, I've been going off the blocks a lot. And I tried to go for, like, big numbers. So I'll just tell you exactly what happened. I think I was trying to power, like, 90, right? I was building up, it was in the complexes. Power snatch 90 off of the blocks. Okay? So, I get to 80, killing it, right? Actually, it's not even killing it, but like I'm saying, like, the story that I'm telling myself is I am killing it. Like, I'm hitting, like, parallel.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not in the mindset of, like, oh, man, I'm hitting parallel. How am I ever going to get to 90?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, let's put on more weight. Let's see.
Yeah.
I get to 85. I hit parallel again, even though I'm like, shit, that was harder than 80, but we're still there. We're still in the game, It's like these conflicting thoughts. I think I go straight to 90. Oh, no, I go to 88. I hit the brakes. But it's below parallel.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, you know what? I mean, we hit the brakes.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Maybe that was just a bad rep, and then we just got to move on.
Yeah.
Let's try 90.
Yeah.
Right? I get to 90, to way below parallel, but I hit the brakes.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it's not way below, but like if I'm here, like
Sure.
I caught it maybe here, but it took me here.
Yeah.
Right? But let's just say like my bottom's right here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's still a good like amount of...
I know there's a technicality for power, but I just feel like anytime you put the brakes on, that's just a power in my heart.
And that's what I'm telling myself. It's like, well, dude,
yeah,
you hit the brakes on 90. That's huge. I mean, like, you haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah.
And that's like the framework I'm working on.
That's great.
Because I was right next to Vanessa.
Yeah.
And I don't know if my change has been very, like, fast, but I know, she asked me, like, is it like a bad day or something like that? And I was like, no, I learned that I could put the brakes on 90.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, I would love to power snatch 90, but I wasn't ready for it that day.
Yeah.
But we're working on it.
Yeah. Right.
Because I mean, it's not a failure, it's just a opportunity to learn where you're at.
Right. Exactly.
So like this is like the mindset and the framework that I'm working on.
Yeah.
Like I missed 100 the other day terribly. But I'm just like, well, you do feel like shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I get if you would have made it,
yeah,
it would have been huge, and you did it feeling like shit.
Man,
so.
I think that's such a huge thing, especially as it relates to lifts that are made or missed. You know, like I think sometimes people get in this idea that a made lift is a good lift and a missed lift is a bad lift, and that's just not necessarily true. You know, I think there are components of both of those that can be beneficial. Like, you made a lift, but man, it was like fucking ugly as fuck or whatever, you know, you didn't do the things that you were trying to work on. Or you could have missed a lift and it could have been executed pretty much perfectly, but it just didn't end up overhead or whatever.
Yeah.
And so just using each lift as an opportunity to get more information, and then to help that perpetuate the story that you're telling yourself about your lifting. Because I think it's so much more beneficial to tell yourself, yeah, like, that was successful. Oh, that was one thing that in both in The Confident Mind and the book Psycho-Cybernetics that I was talking to you about. I don't know, can't remember if we talked about it in the last podcast, but that Psycho-Cybernetics is basically talking about self-image and how that informs your behavior and how, like, all the stuff we've been talking about. But that the way that you can create success is by remembering your successes. So
yes,
remembering and reminding yourself constantly that you are successful in, like, whatever area you want to do. Like, even an area like, you know, oh, I like tied my shoes today. That was a success. Like, I learned at some point in my life, I learned how to tie my shoes, and I tied my shoes today.
Dude, sometimes I think just getting up out of bed is a success. Like,
exactly.
Like when my alarm goes off and I don't stay there for 20 minutes, I'm like, that was awesome. You did really good, man.
Yeah, I think that should be how people approach life. But I feel like sometimes people get stuck in, and it's a very easy cycle to get stuck into, because it's like being self-loathing, I feel like, is kind of like popular. Like, it's cool to be self-deprecating and self-loathing.
Like, when did it become so popular to say, like, fuck my life?
Yeah.
You know?
Or like,
I mean, I remember saying it and feeling like cool because it's kind of funny, but it's
or
like
being like, oh, I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah, like why is that so cool? Like, to say, like, or it's so maybe it's not cool, but like people can say it and feel like nobody's like looking at you like you're weird.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it's just accepted.
Yeah, I don't like it. I've been learning to try and be aware of when I start saying stuff like that to myself. Like the self-talk. That's one thing that, we were talking about before this, was like learning how to talk to yourself and learning to change the story that you tell yourself. And what I've been doing, I'm going to be vulnerable. This is super cheesy, but I've been actually listening to like positive self-talk tapes. And it's just like audio recordings, and it's like an app actually that I got on my phone, and it's just a guy who like says all like positive things. He does it in different, like, you know, either first person or third person. Like, I'm successful. I'm, I'm happy and healthy, blah, blah, blah. And then he'll like switch into like, you are successful, and like just say it in a bunch of different ways. It's super cheesy. I'm not gonna like lie about that, but I actually kind of fucking love it.
Yeah.
And I don't even really do it, like, I'm not consciously listening to it. I let it play either if I'm like doing dishes or folding laundry or like when I'm driving. I'm not consciously listening to it, but it's just in the background. Because the idea is, so I read this book called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. It's by this guy named Dr. Shad Helmstetter. And he basically says that, like, you're programmed by your self-talk, So, like, yeah, the way that you see the world, the way that you behave is all a result of your programming, which is your self-talk, which could be stories that you have learned from your parents, your school, like, media, stuff like that. And so in order to change that programming, like to listen to positive self-talk, just in the way that you would listen to like a language tape or something, like you're learning another language, just having it in the background so that your mind is like subconsciously picking up on those concepts and ideas.
Yeah.
And whatever, whether or not it's woo-woo or whether or not there's scientific backing, I personally am enjoying it.
Yeah.
So that was my commitment to myself this month, was to be consistent. We talked about consistency over everything. That's my theme for this year. And I've applied that to self-talk and the mindset component of like my life. So my commitment to myself this month was 30 days or like a month of either some visualization practice, some mindset practice, or listening to these self-talk tapes in some capacity, at least 15 minutes a day.
Do you have like a goal for your mindset?
Right now, yes. Well, for my mindset. Well, you don't have to say it. No, I'm not afraid to say it. I am in the process of working on my mindset because I think for so long I was so existential that I didn't care. But now that I'm starting to realize that I do care about shit, I'm like, I'm going to make my mental game the best out of anyone. Like, my mindset is going to be so strong, so solid that nothing's going to shake me. No one's going to bring me down. Like, I want to be that resilient with my mindset. I'm like, that's my goal.
Can I challenge you on that?
Yeah.
What actions physically would you take to do that? Because you're talking a lot about what you're reading, what you're listening to. Is there anything more to that?
It's just that taking actual dedicated time each day. So either to visualize or listen to like the self-talk tapes like while I'm doing something.
Yeah. I honestly believe in order to achieve the toughest physical mindset, you have to go through some really tough shit.
For sure.
Like, if you could stay in the sauna for like an hour, and you tell yourself like, this is just a feeling. This feels terrible.
Yeah.
Or like the people that run ultra marathons and literally their feet are bleeding and they're like, hey, just another step.
Yeah.
It's like all that David Goggins stuff. Like it's like, I mean, not to say that you can't do it mentally, because I guess Buddhists and people that like set themselves on fire for like a cause,
right?
Like, you gotta be mentally strong for that, right? I mean, or just an idiot. But it's just like, I think there's a physical aspect that has to be, if you want to be the best. Like, what do you think about that?
Oh, I agree with you for sure. Because if you make your body do hard things, then your mind is the only thing. Like, if your body can physically handle it, like, your body can physically handle something, but it's usually your mind telling you that it wants to stop, right? Ahead of what your body is actually physically capable of. So
because if you never know the edges or the barriers of where your mental can break, then how can you challenge yourself to be the best? Because there's people here that have probably been through a lot of messed up stuff. And you could, I mean, just because they're not saying like these positive affirmation or listening to like things, I mean, it's just a different thing that they have. Like, absolutely. I think Daniel is actually someone that's super mentally strong.
Yeah.
And he's actually has a really positive mental framework. But I think that comes from I don't know what his life experiences are, but you know, he's been in the Olympic trials for swimming, so he has to have like. And when I watch him lift, and like he's very, it's okay. You know, he has like these safeguards that I could see.
Yeah, interesting.
But I'm just interested to know if you're willing to like. I mean, you're probably willing to, but like, what are you like? If you, I think steps can do it. Yeah. Like 20,000 is hard. Like if you committed to like 20,000 steps and like, oh man, it's it's so high right now or something like.
Yeah.
Like
I mean that's definitely one thing that I would like to push on is like the connection between physical discomfort and mental resiliency. I think for me, I've been trying to work on not being discouraged if I get negative feedback or if I have a negative experience, not having that make me spiral into like a sewer of like negative self-talk, you know, like just building my own confidence in being able to show up and like be myself. I think so here's like an actual like scenario. Like sometimes when I'm coaching, like I get really caught up in this story in the back of my head. I'm like, you're not doing enough. Like you don't know enough. You're not helping enough. And I just get into this like really negative like spiral. Yeah. And so just I think from, having more dedicated like either visualization or self-talk like time, I've learned now to catch that before it starts happening. So now I'm more aware of the thoughts that are happening in my head, and I can kind of like grab it and like pull back on it before I start going down this like cycle of, you're a bad coach, you're a piece of shit, you don't know anything.
What's your trigger that gets you out of it?
I will say, so if I notice it, once I notice it happening, I'll say, I am a good coach. I know, I can do this. I think the biggest thing is I can do this. Just like reminding myself that I'm capable. Like I'm a capable person. Like I can do this. You are a good coach. You have the experience. You have the knowledge. If there's any area where you're lacking, it's something to learn from,
How often does your mind wander into negativity? Because for me, it's pretty often.
Yeah. I mean, less so now. And
you're able to like notice it and drag yourself out of it? Mm-hmm. Because it doesn't have to just be in here. It could just be like...
Oh, yeah, exactly.
In your room, just like thinking of a bad experience. Or, like that happens to me a lot when I'm walking.
Sure.
And the thing that pulls me out of it is I say to myself, 15:45. Once I think 15:45, then I'm like, we're done.
You told me that before.
Yeah, but no one's ever going to figure it out. Yeah. So because 15:45 signifies what's important, like what's your goal, like why are you doing all this? And if I think like, oh, that's why. 15:45. Yeah. Like immediately, I'm out of like this. Interesting. Like if I'm like, oh, this person like gave me a bad look, or or the guy just cut me off. Like I'm not gonna let myself spiral into be like this like negativity, like a river of negativity. I'm just 15:45. We're good. Yeah. Like what's important?
Yeah, I like that. That's good. That might be helpful to have like an actual specific like cue or something that will pull you out.
Well, it has to be. I think it has to be something that really is important to you. Like if it's your child, then it's like Samantha. You know, why are you getting mad at fucking whatever it is? Like your spilled coffee. Yeah. Just Samantha.
Yeah, interesting. I like that. I have to think about that.
I got that from the doorway. Like because I stopped like thinking of. When I look at doorways, I think of my goals. Mm-hmm. Like, the thing was in the book that, like, if you walk through a doorway, anytime you do that, you just, like, think of, like, what your goals is or say that whatever thing is.
Affirmation
and like, to me, I was, like, hitting doorways. I'm like, 15:45. Yeah. But now it's not so much that. Like, I think when I see that, like, the doorways, then it brings me to, like, what my goals are. Yeah. But I've been able to just use it in general to just keep me away from negativity. Yeah. Which has been really helpful. Yeah. I almost died yesterday.
Yesterday? Why? On your bike?
I've been really into... Okay. Gosh, man. How far should we go into this conversation?
No. Where are you taking me?
I feel like I'm almost at the end of my Olympic weightlifting. I feel that way. Okay. Like where I'm like, oh... It's either you can do this or you can't do this. And once you can't do it, or once you know that you can't do it, then we're just... Or no. if I know that I can do it, then I have further to go.
Okay.
If I reach the point of like, hey, you just can't do this, then it's like my drive's gone. Like I'm not gonna I'm not just gonna sit around in mediocrity. So I'm almost like going into like my next phase of life where I'm like, what do I think that I'm good at, or like what are the goals that I can, because I don't want to not have a goal.
Sure.
Like, have you like listened to like elite athletes or that have actually reached their goals and like reached this number or reached this achievement and then they're just depressed after?
Yeah.
Like I think that's a real thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't want that to happen because I could possibly reach something and it's like,
well, that's it.
Well, that's not what I thought it would feel like. You know, and then just live in like the space of like no purpose. Like I don't like that. So I've been doing a lot of rock climbing and like hiking. And honestly, the hiking is going into like the steps because I've been doing so many steps.
Yeah.
It might be for you too. Because it's true that once you've done something enough, your body learns to be efficient at it, and you're just not burning as many calories doing the same thing. Like if you're doing 10,000 steps every day, 6 months later, if you're still doing that, it's not gonna help or push the envelope that much.
Sure.
So, the next best thing to me was like incline walking on the treadmill. I could at least read my book, but I just realized I'm like, this is so fucking boring. Yeah. Like I like reading the book because the book takes me out of like the treadmill walking, but I'm just like in my garage. Like I don't want to hang out in my garage all day. Or like if I want it to be more interesting and things to look at, I'll go to EOS or whatever commercial gym and just walk. But at the end of the day, walking on a treadmill is really boring. Yeah. So I was like, let's just go for a hike. Because I was like rock climbing a little bit, and then I've been listening to like Alex Honnold a lot, and he's the guy that free soloed El Cap Yosemite. He went all the way up there without a rope. Right. And he's such an interesting character to me. I want to go deeper on him because I think he's like an interesting case study. But I've been listening to him a lot and listening to things that he's been doing, and he's just like his physical activity is just disappearing in a mountain and like going for like a long cycling ride or like literally just hiking and scrambling through the mountains. And I was thinking like, hey, I'm gonna just do this new hike. I've never done it before. And so I had the option to download maps, and I was like, I clicked it. I'm like, oh, $40 membership? Nah, I'm good. Oh, so I was like, okay, we'll just try this new hike. And I got so far off the trail. My 3.5 mile hike turned into a 7-mile hike. Jeez. And I was, and it said on the app, hard. And I was like, and it said like requirements like rock climbing shoes, GPS and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I'm good with just my shoes. I'll just bring some water. Oh my God. Actually, I brought water.
That's how people die, Lawrence.
I know, and I told you, I almost died. So I brought my water. I didn't bring my rock climbing shoes. I actually brought some protein and like a little bit of coffee, and I brought my books. I stopped for a little bit, read my book. But that was all when I thought everything was cool. Yeah. But it started to really not be cool later on. And I actually did bring some extra food too. But so I did the hike. Halfway through, I'm like, oh man, it's pretty easy. I did have to rock climb over a couple things, but I'm still on the trail. And it said on the app, like, not marked well. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, so I go, and there's a sharp U-turn, like, halfway through, right? And then you have the other half of the trail. Yeah. I wasn't sure, like, if this was the marking point of, like, of turning around, basically. Because it's separate, like, and I tried to go down it, and I'm like, and it took me to the spot where I'm like, I don't think this is it. So I just went back down to like where I was, because obviously I can always go back, and then just retrace my steps, right? Sure. Like it's not that complicated. I actually know where I am, but it's just like I'm actually in between these two mountain ranges, kind of, and it's not that I can't get out. It's more like I need to know the best way because going over the mountain is very treacherous. Right. So like I went back to where I was. And I just kept going straight, and I was in like a riverbed. And I was like, okay, well, this is probably what it is. And the riverbed started to get more like rocky and bouldery, and like I was like, well, you know what? This is probably it, because it kind of looks like a trail. But then, and I was like, well, it did say it's hard, so I might as well just keep going. So I was like, this is kind of hard, but this is probably what I'm supposed to be. Oh my God. So, and I had such a positive mindset about stuff. So I'm like, well, I'm definitely lost now. Oh. This can't be the trail. No. So I was
Did you have service on your phone?
No.
Oh my
So I was like, well, I can always go back, but it's gonna take forever. It's gonna take a long time, and the sun, like, sunsets at like 7:30 or whatever. At least I looked that up, right? It was 7:30, so I was like, I had been there since 3 p.m.
Oh my god!
So you know, I was like, my thought was, well, daylight's running out. It's definitely sunset. I better just go up the mountain as far as I can so that I can see the trail. And I get up really fucking high, like super high. And this is not where you're supposed to be. I had to do like really like hard like climbs, and down climbing is not easy. So I'm like, well, you know what, dude, just commit. You know, you'll be all right. And I had like this really positive mindset, like, we're just gonna commit to this, and we're gonna see the trail. And honestly, it's a good thing I never went all the way up, because if I went all the way up, I would have never seen the trail. I was miles away from the trail. Miles.
Oh my god.
And then luckily, I didn't have to go up all the way, because I'm like, oh, I get this notification. I'm like, oh, shoot. Okay, I got some signal. So I'm like, and honestly, I turned around. I was so high up the other mountain range.
Yeah.
I turned around and I could see the strip. So I'm like, dude, well, I know where I'm at, you know? It's just not a matter, it wasn't a matter of like, you know, where am I? It's like, what's the safest way to get out of here?
Yeah, gotcha.
Because literally, like, the sun was going down, and I went up so high, like, it wasn't even an option to me to down climb.
Yeah.
Because, like, I climbed up some really treacherous things. And I go on my app, and I finally, like, you know, signal is happening, and then I look at it, I'm like, dude, you're miles away from the trail. So I'm like, well, no point in complaining about this now. Like, if I did not have this positive like thing that I'm getting from the book and like from you and just like, you know, just life in general, I would have been spiraling.
Dude, because you could really like.
No, I was at the point where I was like, because I had no signal.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, oh man, I got to the point where like, I don't know if I can go up any higher.
Right.
Because it's so vertical.
Yeah.
So I'm like.
You could have really panicked.
Yeah, I could have. And I was this close to calling search and rescue. Yeah. I was super close.
Dang.
But then I got signal, and I was like, well, dude, you know, calling search and rescue is kind of like, for me, like, a bitch-ass move. Because I see civilization. It's right there.
Yeah.
But I'm like, dude, miles on the trail, no choice. You thought that you couldn't down climb? It's time to down climb. And I slipped a couple times, but I'm like, I was just thinking in the mindset, like, just don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Don't get hurt. If you don't get hurt, then you're fine.
Damn, dude.
Because I went back down and there was a point of like no signal. And I was like, well, you didn't tell anyone where you were at that point. You should have.
Oh my god.
But I didn't want to freak anyone out.
That's crazy.
So I like, do you know I'm religious?
Yeah.
Okay, so I pray sometimes and like, so like I didn't see anyone for hours.
Yeah.
Like hours, right? So I'm like, I was able to like kind of like keep the map open. And like kind of see like where the trail is.
Yeah.
I'm like, but before I couldn't. Like I downloaded Google Maps, but it wasn't specific enough for me to actually find the trail. So like I had the other map where it actually was like a specific trail map, and because I had signal, it kind of downloaded. So I like had it up, right? So I can kind of see how close I was. I was like, okay, I'm getting closer, and all of a sudden I see two people, and they were right at the U-turn of where I needed to go. So I was like, oh my god, thank you, Lord. Like they sent me two angels for me to find my way out. And I was like, man, if I was like having a really negative mindset, I probably would have like not be here.
Yeah.
I would have definitely been in the dark.
Just
I was almost like being cool with the idea of like, dude, you're just gonna be here tonight. This is like where you're gonna be. Because you cannot down climb that in this dark. Because my vision's already pretty bad, and when the light was coming down, I was like, I could barely see stuff. But luckily, I find the trail because these two people were there. I just followed back, and it was fine.
Oh my god, dude.
And then
I saw your Instagram story post, and I was like, oh, cool, he went like on a hike. I didn't know all this was happening.
Yeah, dude, it was like, okay, I'm gonna show you a picture. You guys are not gonna see it on the podcast, but this is how far I was from the trail. Let's see. Oh my gosh. Sorry, guys.
Crazy, man. I can't believe all that happened.
This is where the trail was, and I was
God.
all the way up there.
That's
like
nuts,
miles
dude.
and miles away. And like this is like like see where the sun was going. I was trying to find like I wanted to see the sun at least, and it was way up. And below that, like this is treacherous. Dude.
Yeah, that's sketchy.
Yeah, and then even behind me, like I climbed a whole bunch.
That's crazy, dude. Well,
so,
I'm glad you're alive.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, my point is like doing that, and then everything else, like everything is like so much like. Because I kind of was, like, facing death a little bit.
Sure.
So I was like, everything else is, like, super chill here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not worried about, like,
yeah.
I'm not stressed about, like, yeah, dude, just, like, be comfortable with this position.
Yeah.
You know, like, because you're not dying. Like, everything's fine.
Yeah.
So it
puts everything into perspective.
Yeah, and, like, whenever you're also put in that position, it's, like, that mental discipline of, like, hey, just take another step.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm better off.
Of being, like making sure that you're focused enough to make the next right decision.
Exactly.
You know, because then if you would have spiraled into panicking,
yeah.
then goes back to the whole thing where you're talking about like you fall back on your training.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if you were in a high stress situation, you're not ready for this like kind of like scenario, so you could have really just
the down climb was like crazy. Like thinking about I'm not a super like well trained rock climber. Like I have like pretty little experience, but even I know I'm like, well, dude, it's dark. Look for the handholds.
Yeah.
Look for the footholds.
Yeah.
Climb your way down. If you fall, no one's gonna help you.
Yeah.
So you gotta be very focused,
dude.
So
well, don't do that again.
I'm actually gonna go back like pretty soon.
But can you tell someone that you're gonna be there?
I always do.
Well, you did it.
I told my family, and then I told
okay,
my girlfriend, even though she's like on the East Coast.
What are you gonna do?
Just freak out. That's all she's gonna do. Who's she gonna
Great.
call?
I can't do anything.
But yeah, so like I'm kind of like in that point where I'm like, and this is like I didn't think I was gonna talk about this, but I'm in that point where it's, well, I might be done with weightlifting soon, so like,
you gotta find something else.
Let me make sure I have like my thing that
sink your teeth into. Yeah, I think that's important. I think, like I said before, I've gone through periods of my life, well, and especially in the last maybe like 5 years, where I've gotten existential to the point of like apathy and depression, where it's like nothing mattered, so I like didn't want to do anything.
Yeah,
and that was just a really sad way to live. Like it just wasn't fun, you know. So now I realize like nothing matters, so I should care about the things that I care about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's way more interesting, and it's way more like fulfilling and way more motivating to live my life like that. So
yeah, I think it's like would your younger self, you might be different, but like I sometimes like question like if my younger self saw where I am now, would he be happy? I think it'd be fucking psyched.
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe you got your you're a weightlifting coach or whatever. Yeah. I can't believe, because I got my USAW thing probably around the same time as you. And I had never used it, like, for anything. And, like, I'm actually, like, committed to, like, the idea of, like, we're just going to see what my human potential is. Like, I'm all about, like what's possible. So,
yeah.
What do you think? Would you be proud of yourself?
I think I would be proud of how secure I feel as a person, like how comfortable with myself I feel. I think maybe objectively in terms of like career and success and finances and stuff like that, younger Jen would be like, really? But, but you know, whatever. I don't think that matters. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, there were points in my life where like that's all I wanted to do was coach, you know. So I think, yeah, I mean, I would be proud of myself in that respect.
Yeah, the money thing is a hard one, like finances and all that, because like I don't know, like I can speak from a place of like having like quite a bit, and it's just like, and then like being able to do what I want, it's just not as, and that feels like a shitty thing to say, like it's not like the most important thing, because like obviously it's really important to fucking people that are in a hard situation. So I don't want to be that, you know, what's the word? Pessimistic. Or, I don't know what the word
Disregard.
is. Yeah, like what their feelings matter.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah.
Because I'm not you, so I can't.
Yeah. I do agree with you to some degree, but like there's a certain base level of where you have your basic needs met, where when you have those met, then you're not kind of like stressed out about, you know, finances. And so I'm trying to reach that level so I can get to the point where I can feel like, oh yeah, money doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I'd like to get to that point. That's my goal.
But money doesn't matter. Like, if you think about it, like, it really doesn't. What about
a place to live and, you know, food to eat?
I don't know. I'm really in this fucking binge of, like, I got a van. So
I know, right?
Like, this rock climbing thing. I'm like,
I have lived in my car before, so, you know.
I mean, like, I think it's what you make of it, like, mentally. Because there's a thing about, like, oh, man, I don't want to... Because someone that's listening to this that's actually a rock climber is, like, going to think, like... Dumbass. Like, this guy's, like, just biting off of, like, Alex Honnold and his stuff.
Yeah.
Because, like, I love the way he thinks. Like,
sure.
He's so crazy as far as, like... He's not the most amazing athlete. He's not even close to anywhere near, like, the most, like, gifted rock climber.
Yeah.
But the only thing that sets him apart is his mindset.
See, this is why I said that I want to have the strongest mindset. I want to be unshakable. Because it's like, I think that sets people apart. You know, even if they're physically, like, even if you have two athletes that are very much physically at the same level, the one that's going to be set apart is the one with the mindset. Yeah.
I mean, like, that Free Solo movie made a whole bunch of fucking money.
Yeah.
And he's, like I said, he's not the fucking best. Mm-hmm. In fact, the guys that are the best, they won't even, like, try to climb that shit without a rope. But this guy is so, like, mentally, like, oh, it's just the next move.
Yeah.
I'm so prepared for, like, everything that's happening that however many feet down doesn't matter because I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
So it's like that security of yourself and your mind is so crazy. Like, what if I had that? And because I'm not the best Olympic weightlifter ever, so it's like, what could the greatest mindset, what could that accomplish? Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But I've been thinking a lot about it. I'm super existential about shit now. It's not your fault. It's more like...
You turn into me.
No, but I'm thinking like, well, I want to accomplish something great.
Yeah.
And it's like, shoot, if I can't do it in weightlifting, I got to find something else.
Sure.
That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm stuck in a body like that like should have been like made for elite athleticism. Or maybe like my mind is that. I don't know.
Yeah.
So...
Well, I mean,
have you ever like come across someone like that thought like that? Am I unique in that way? I feel like, cause it's crazy.
You're
like
pretty unique, I would say, just in the people that I've come across. Again, because like we were saying earlier, I think it's very commonplace to be self-deprecating. It's very commonplace to, you know, like not think highly of yourself. In like a way that's you're trying to be humble or whatever.
Right.
But I think that is a detriment to a lot of people who could achieve more if they believed that all of that was possible.
Sorry, I'm trying to fix myself.
Your shorts confuse me.
I know. I was gonna wear just these, but then they're so short. And
yeah.
I'm like, I just threw this on. I'm like, well, I look kind of crazy, but I don't really care because nothing matters.
Nothing matters.
So, gosh, you got more time?
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about...
Are you hitting all the points that...
I'm not even close yet. I'm going like off of like the rails.
Okay.
Because I really like... These are the things that are happening recently that I feel like are on my mind and are fresh.
Sure.
Like, I'm a rock climber.
This is
I go on hikes now. I scramble up mountains. Interestingly enough, I did work out after that because I had a deload workout. And I was like...
Is it fine?
I killed it.
Yeah.
Like, I crushed it. Like, I think it's important to have days that you work out by yourself.
Yes.
Because it's mentally challenging. You don't have your peers to, like, cheer you on. I think it's important to train on days where you have no sleep or you just feel shitty in general.
Right.
Because if you can do that, that's one, an accomplishment, and two, that means that something good is happening.
Well, and just to put it to context, too, in competition, you might have factors out of your control. Your flight gets delayed, whatever, you're in a different time zone, like you just don't sleep well when you're at a hotel, and you're gonna have to compete in not optimal conditions, right? Like when I was in AO final, I didn't really sleep very well, and like we had changed to like the East Coast time zone, and I felt like shit like on the day that I competed, but it was like, doesn't matter. I can't use that as an excuse for a bad performance, because everyone else has to fucking deal with it too.
Right. Doesn't matter if you went miles off the trail and you went up this mountain, like, you know what the facts are now. Yeah. So you just deal with what you have.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's true. Yeah. Training while you're tired or not physically optimal, not feeling physically optimal.
Yeah. There were thorns and bushes that I went through that's like, I didn't think were anything, but I just walked toward them and they were just ripping me up.
Oh my god.
I was just like, wow, I'm going to avoid that bush now. There were a bunch of them.
That is so crazy.
Do you think it's crazy? Do you think?
Yes, I do.
Because I feel like it's not that crazy. Because I honestly feel like that there have been people that have been in way worse situations.
Oh, for sure. But
so, like, it's
just knowing you and, like, I don't know. Yeah, you're just, like, recently a rock climber. So I'm like, what? Lawrence is getting lost in the mountains rock climbing?
But I love it because there's something about it that I'm like, when I'm out there, it just feels like it's not, man, I don't want the podcast to go this way, but, like, all this civilization stuff and everything is so easy for us.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that people are doing that's, like, actually hard or challenging. Whenever you're actually faced with, like, a death situation, it's like, everything, like, I really mean this, like, everything else is so chill.
Yeah.
Like, nothing can shake me. That's how I felt. Like, like, people just get mad about, like, oh, my snatch wasn't feeling the way I wanted to feel. I'm like, I almost died yesterday. like, at least you're snatching. Like,
right. Right. Exactly. Perspective, for sure.
So it's like, I don't know. I don't even know. I got so hot just now that I forgot what we were just talking about.
You got really emotional.
But
well, I just wanted to make sure we covered all the topics that you wanted
not even close.
Not even close. We didn't talk about one thing that we wanted to talk about.
Okay, so I was talking about, like, no, we talked about quite a few.
Okay.
But I was talking about, like, wanting to achieve, like, great things, and, like, that's how I feel. There's two things I want to hit on. I don't know which one I should do first, but just a preview. Surviving versus dominating. That's the first one. And the next one is how to get Coach Billy to allow you to get to take a higher attempt. I realize that there are people that are not worried about the numbers. There are people that just listen. So, like, that kind of threw me off a little bit. Like, that was like a culture shock. Like I just listen as an athlete. I just listen to Coach. Okay, so for one, you should always listen to Coach.
Sure.
Like, I don't just. I mean, I do kind of do things willy-nilly, but if Coach says something, I will listen to him. And if I want a number, because a lot of the times I want bigger numbers, right? But I do want to respect the coach and take the attempts that he tells me to. Like, if it was up to me, I'd probably take 10 attempts at 110% or 101%, try to push the boundaries. But I don't do that out of respect for Coach. Now, I guess we'll do the how to get Coach to allow you to hit bigger numbers. Do you think about that as far as, like, oh shoot, I really had 65 in the morning that I was thinking about or something like that, but I don't know if Coach is gonna allow me to do that. Like, do you even think about numbers like that? Max days, heavy days.
Yeah, I have started to, and in the context of competition, I've thought about it a lot. Just with my experience coaching athletes and kind of watching them in the back room and how they build up to stuff.
Yeah.
And also during max days too, here's the thing. If you want Coach to let you go up, you have to make all of your warm-up attempts look good. You have to kill every single warm-up attempt. You can't just, like, take them for granted, because if they don't look good and if they don't look solid, he will not allow you to go up. And so that's when I was at Masters Nationals, that was like a big thing for me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to kill all these warm-ups so that once we get to my opener, maybe he'll let me go up a couple kilos. And he let me open a kilo higher than what we had planned on.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I've seen him do that numerous times with other athletes too. It's just like, because that's his indicator that everything's firing on all cylinders. We're good to go. All right. But if any of them look shitty, like, no go. It's a no way.
Okay, I guess I'll preface it with, this is for the athletes who want to achieve a certain number and how to do that under the confines of like Coach Billy allowing you to do it, because he's calling the numbers. So 2 situations. Heavy days on Max Out Fridays. I'll just say Max Out Fridays, but days that we go heavy on. It could be a complex. It could be, really it's more competition because we have heavy days prior to competition. Like we try to go for between second and third, something like that, right? Mm-hmm. That's the one scenario. The other scenario is on the competition platform, which you just addressed. You have to kill it. Like you have to make sure that your warm-ups are phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not just the way it looks, it also has to do with your mindset and the way you talk to yourself about it.
Right.
Because sometimes a coach can't tell, but the way you talk about it will dictate whether or not it will be 98 kilos or 100 kilos. Mm-hmm. Because if coach asks you, sometimes he'll ask, should we go 98 or 100? And if you're not really like, let's go for 100, then there's a chance it's going to be 98 on there.
Right.
So you hit on everything with the competition, but in training, you got to understand that Coach Billy wants you to achieve your best numbers on the competition platform. Already understand that. So it's probably going to be less, or you're going to get cut off at a certain point. So if you want to achieve like a 100 kilo snatch, guess what? You got to kill 95 and 98. So you have to make everything look good, and not only that, positive self-talk, like show that you're ready.
Yeah.
Don't celebrate too early.
Yeah.
Because at the moment that you really are happy about something, then he has a thing of like, hey,
you're gonna lose your drive for the next weight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is there any other tips?
Really,
just killing the weights.
Killing the weights.
Being optimistic.
Right.
That's really it.
Yeah, I mean, especially if he's in a situation where we have a lot of athletes, and a lot of people's different comp preps. Like he doesn't this is the same thing for me too. It's like we all can't keep track of how everyone's comp prep went. All
right.
We can go off of is how those warm up attempts look, or like on a heavy Max Out Friday. Like all we can go off of are how those things are moving. And I've heard him say before, like, when he watches people lift, he can usually tell by like the third or fourth build up whether or not they're going to get up to the top. He
Definitely.
can tell by the way that you're moving, by the height of your pull, by the speed, by your consistency of positioning. He can immediately tell like this person's not going to get into PR territory today, and so
body language.
Yeah, body language too, for sure.
Yeah. I thought that was going to be a longer conversation, but we agree on this.
Yeah,
so
we do
sounds
agree
good.
on this.
Okay, now I want to get on the topic of surviving versus dominating.
Okay, explain that to me.
Okay, I thought about this recently because I want to achieve excellence in this sport, and in order to do that, you have to strive for greater things. That's just the way I think about it. Mm-hmm. But and this relates to Olympic weightlifting, and more specifically the programming at Las Vegas Barbell. So we have percentage ranges. We have complexes. There's 2 types of athletes. I think it's the person that tries to survive training and make the weights, and there's the person that dominates the weights. Mm-hmm. And to me, I try to be the person that dominates the weights. Sure. Another example of a person that dominates the weights is John.
Yeah.
He will go, and I'll go into what dominating is first. There are certain things that you can do in a power snatch or a full snatch, or it's acceptable to do certain things because these are good habits. Mm-hmm. For example, if I do a power snatch and I pause at the top, even if it's not on the programming, and I'm controlling it and pausing it,
right,
there's really nothing wrong with it. I don't think there's a coach that will say like, hey, it's not supposed to be a pause.
Yeah.
But you doing that exhibits so much more control.
Right. To
me, that's not only just power snatching and making the weight, but it's like pausing it shows dominance. Sure. and that that this weight is a joke to you.
Yeah, that you're controlling it.
I would almost say that like even 1 inch pausing is like, I don't know if there's a coach that would be like, hey, you should stop that.
Yeah.
Over here, you know, I mean, it's me, you, and Billy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm in favor of someone doing that. So to me, it's doing the extra little things that show that you have just so much skill that you could do whatever you want to X weight.
Yeah.
So to me, you know what John was doing today? He said, I'm just gonna, it's week 3, right? Heavy?
Yeah.
He decided, I'm gonna go no hook grip.
Oh, on his clean.
Honestly, yeah. And then not only that, I noticed he wasn't doing any chalk.
Interesting.
I was like, John, are you chalking? Because I saw him wipe his hands.
Yeah.
Off. This was something that rock climbers do when they have no chalk. They just wipe,
You
wipe
know
their
now.
face. Yeah, I mean, you know. But I was watching it and I was like, you know, that's not on the programming. But he's like really dominating this weight.
Yeah.
Like he's toying with it. He can do whatever he wants.
He's definitely the king of variation. I actually learned that from him. Like using warm-ups and using your building sets to play around with variation. Like I learned the no hook grip clean from him to practice, like, you know, keeping the bar close after contact. And I really appreciate that about him because he, you know, it allows you to focus on specific concepts and ideas that then translate into, when you do get into your working sets, that can then translate into...
But I don't even think he thinks about it, like, technically.
Sure.
I think he does it and says to himself, what can I do to make this harder?
Yeah.
And, like, that type of athlete is, if they miss a weight, they're more than likely, or miss, like, a way that a weight is supposed to be done. Yeah. For example, if in the programming it says, pause split jerk.
Yeah.
If you miss the pause, because pausing a split jerk is really you showing your skill and your ability to do it. And if you fail to pause, or if you fail to pause split jerk, it's not really you failing into like a completely missed lift. It's like you try to get so much more control and you just fail to pause that you just turn into a regular split jerk.
Right.
So it's like you failing in your dominance and your ability to like, hey, say I want to have maximum control, really just takes you to a made lift.
Yeah.
So if you were going for like a heavy clean, but you said I'm gonna power it all the way through just because I can, you know, and then eventually you're just gonna fail your way to a heavy clean. You should asserting that dominance over that weight.
Yeah. Takes
you to a place of like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. I like that. I like that perspective.
So I don't think there's too many athletes like that in the gym.
Sure.
I think for sure I try to be that way.
Yeah.
I know John tries to be that way. There are people that just go straight with the programming, and that's to me like surviving. Like I'm trying to just, and that doesn't mean like a bad thing. Like I'm trying to survive. It could just mean like, hey, I'm just gonna try to make all the lifts and the percentage, but that's fine. But they're not really striving for that next step. And whenever you fail surviving, you actually are more likely to just go into the category of a missed lift.
Sure. Because
you didn't really try to get that extra piece of control.
Yeah.
So it's just the idea of like, I want everyone to strive for dominance of the weight.
Yeah.
And not just go to the gym and try to survive.
Yeah.
Like just try to make weights, because there's some people like, you can do this. You're allowed to pause a power snatch, or you're allowed to do a 1 inch pause, even though the program doesn't say it. And I'm not saying like whatever Billy says, do that. But there are extra things that you can go for a slower pull. You can go for, I don't know, no feet, but like, you know, just make sure you're doing things correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one thing in the seminar this weekend that Chris talked about was our job as coaches is to, at some point after the initial like beginner phase, is to help the athlete become autonomous, you know?
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's helpful to have a coach, but to get to the point where you're taking enough ownership over your training that you can make decisions like that, you know? Like, that's why I always try to explain when I teach the bar warm-up to our members coming into the gym for the first time. It's like, this is just the framework. This is just like the ground level. It's giving you something to start with. But then once you start learning more, you start realizing there are other things that might be helpful as well, other bar drills, other variations. Like, you can make this your own, and you can make this specific to you, but, you know, the biggest thing with the bar warm-up is just make it consistent. But I like the idea of, dominance over the lift, because that's creating autonomy. It's saying, I am being aware enough of my lifting to know what it is that I need to focus on, and then I'm going to make these changes so that I can work on that or whatever. And then, you're right. The road that leads down to is essentially making lifts. And that's why I think it's also really important for people to consider percentages and the range of percentages that we work in, because I think sometimes people see percentages and they always think, okay, I have to either go to the top of my range, and I'm not successful unless I go to the top of my range. But they're really bad quality reps, or, you know, even missed lifts. It's like, that's not the point of the range. The point is to elicit technical consistency. And we might get to a point where we start getting into a range where technique starts to break down. Okay, let's go to where the very edge of that is, so that we can execute the technique, and still, be successful with the lift, versus, pushing to the top of the range, and then you start just, missing shit, you know?
Yeah.
Because Billy always says, your body remembers how to make a lift, but it will also learn how to miss a lift.
That's a very true thing. I mean, you want to avoid... I mean, I think, and you probably agree with me, that the program is designed for you not to miss.
Right. He's very big on that. Very big on that.
And he hasn't ever told me that, but, maybe you're right. If I'm going to give myself pushback, maybe that more athletes don't do it because they don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's one area where I want to start kind of helping our athletes learn, is that this is a process. This is collaborative. It's not just we give you the program and tell you what to do, and then that's it. You're only doing that. It's a process of learning about yourself as an athlete, and making decisions like that. The fact that you can take, I think Billy and I have this conversation, is that you can take the general team program, and it's the same program that everyone else is doing, but then make these adjustments on things that you want to focus on specifically. You're still doing the program with everyone else, but now we're targeting towards, okay, you're working on your second pull or speed through the middle phase or whatever, and you can make those adjustments because you become autonomous as an athlete. And so that's, I think, maybe an overarching goal for me and maybe for Billy, is to help our athletes kind of be autonomous in that way. We can make decisions, we can take ownership of our own lifting,
Yeah, but I don't also have you and Billy talked about that for me specifically?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Anyway, I don't want to cause this whole thing where everyone's doing power cleans on a day it's supposed to be full cleans. There has to be rhyme and reason to what you're doing. So I guess being not maybe asked.
That's why I say it's collaborative. I'm sure you probably said to Billy hey, I'm gonna try this whole cycle off the blocks. And he'll either be I think that's a great idea, or probably be no.
Yeah. And he's told me no before.
Yeah.
Whenever it's not often, but
you don't get told no very often.
I think I'm reasonable with the thing. I'm not doing anything crazy.
Okay.
But he shut the squat every day down quick. Once he learned that I'm doing the program and still trying to squat every day, he's no, don't do that.
Yeah.
I was okay.
Well, and and he's giving that advice not because he's trying to be a dick, but because of his years of experience and knowing, response to training and all that stuff. All of his experience and knowledge is informing decisions like that, so he can give an informed decision of whether or not he thinks something should be done or shouldn't be done.
So I think it should probably be more on the coaches to recognize if an athlete is doing something that's not really on the program. Maybe like I'm telling you, a pause at the top, or maybe a 1-inch pause.
Yeah.
Which really to me is not a big deal.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it correct enough, I don't think the coaches will say anything.
No.
If everything looks good, everything looks nice. And you're still able to dominate the weight in your own way.
Yeah.
I think that's I don't think you really have to tell the coaches. The coaches should be the one that's like, hey,
Yeah.
you probably shouldn't be doing that with this because,
Yeah.
we have... And the coach should have a good reason. They should be like, well, we're going heavy tomorrow. If you push it like that, I mean, that's not going to be good. Or like, like the top reps are not going to be very good because you're pushing these warm-up weights so much with like this extra effort. So to me, what do you think about that? Do you think that the athlete should tell the coach, or do you think...
Well, I mean, I'll notice, like, if someone's doing a variation that I don't recognize on the program, I'll just be like, hey, is this intentional? Like, and they'll either say, oh, no, I read that wrong, or...
No, what if they say, I'm just trying to dominate the weight, coach?
I'll be like, you must have listened to Lawrence's podcast.
Yeah, nothing matters, coach. Like, who cares what I do?
I'm like, that's true. Go ahead and do whatever you want then, if nothing matters.
Yeah, well, get the fuck out. I don't know. What do you think about all that? Like, just dominating weight.
I like that. I definitely like that. I think that that plays into the concept of autonomy that I was thinking about this weekend. But I like the terminology you're using to dominate that. And I think that's just, focusing on, especially we have this split right now going on in our programming. We have either a technique focus or
I have no idea what anyone is doing ever. It's so helpful for me to have my computer out because I have the tabs for each program.
Yeah, gotcha.
It's kind of hectic right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs going on right now. But especially in the technique focus, a big emphasis has been on quality of movement and how the percentages don't really matter. Here's an example that Billy would use with me a long time ago that really stuck with me. He's like, because it was some day we were doing power snatches or something, and I was like, not power snatching. I was like full squat, and he's like, it doesn't matter if you're intending for them to be a power snatch and they end up full snatches. If they're not power snatches, they're not power snatches. You know what I mean? Okay. Like, it doesn't mean anything if you are intending them to be a power but they end up a full. It only matters if they are actually power snatches, which just means that you're catching above parallel. Right. And I was like, interesting. Because in my head, I wanted to be at the top of my range doing those power snatches and still tell myself, oh, I did those power snatches. Oh, interesting. When I didn't actually do those power snatches because they were full snatches.
So in that situation, was it that you couldn't keep up with the percentages?
Correct. So, I couldn't.
But you wanted to still do this, so you just ended up snatching.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, so I wanted to do my top range numbers, but they didn't end up being received above parallel. Mm-hmm. And so Billy was just like, they're not power snatches. And so your body doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know, like, oh, you meant for this to be a power snatch and now it's a full snatch. So, okay, like, your body will remember the sequencing and the positions and, like, the feeling of the lift. And so if we're trying to elicit vertical leg drive, explosiveness, height on the bar, power snatch is the way to go, right? And so it doesn't help elicit those qualities if I'm making my what should be power snatches full snatches. Right. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
So I think in terms of technical lifting, like, decide on the quality you want to have, and like only do part of dominating the weights is only doing the weights where you can dominate. Right. You know what I mean? Right. Choosing the correct weights.
Right. And if that means doing the lower percentages, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's great, actually.
Yes. I think that's more beneficial than if you were to just like slug your way through some high percentage weights that like didn't have the qualities of any of the lifts that you like wanted to do.
If you did the lower percentages all the way through in the cycle, which I might actually be doing in the next thing because I'm so beat right now, because I chose to do way higher percentages. Sure. But like I said, I think that was important. But I might be, or anyone, if you did the lower percentage and you just absolutely murdered every set, I think that's amazing. Yeah. I think that's great. Because did they talk about like what percentage is like the best for Olympic weightlifting to like build on?
What do you mean?
Like if you did 100% all the time, your body's going to be beat up and you're probably going to move slower and more sluggish. Right. Did they talk about anything like that?
To some degree. I mean, there were percentages relative to like strength and like power and stuff like that. I can't exactly remember.
Like, for example, if you do squat every day, you're probably going to lose the ability to squat really fast.
Sure. Yeah.
But you could probably do some heavy singles and grind them out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like a quality that I have because I trained it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But like the speed of it is like
Yeah.
something that I don't really have.
Yeah.
So they didn't talk about that. What's his name? He's a black dude, Morris. He went to the Olympics. Harrison Morris.
Yeah.
His coach.
He's not black.
Is he not black?
No. Is
Well,
he?
He looks black.
Harrison Morris? I'm gonna pull him up on my phone now.
Yeah, his coach talked about 85%, 85%, where you're actually moving with explosive intention.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do that at 100%
Yeah,
consistently.
they did talk about 85%.
Yeah?
Like, yeah.
I should teach the level 2. Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's a black guy.
Oh my god.
He's not black.
This guy?
Yeah, light skin.
Is he? Sorry, everyone. I don't know. I actually don't know.
I just thought he was black.
Anyway.
I think I hit all my points. Do you have anything that you want to talk about? I do want to talk about visualization one more time.
Okay.
Do you have anything, though?
No.
How important is it to visualize what is realistic, as close to realistic as possible, versus like fantasy, like me snatching 120 right now? You know what I mean? Because they didn't talk about that in the book. Like as far as like I mean, I haven't gone through it all, but like should I? Like, what is your opinion? Should I visualize the struggle of the lift? Because realistically, at this number, this is how it's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So how close should I visualize to what reality actually is?
I honestly feel like I'm going to go back to it as like I feel like you should visualize the end result, which the end result is always going to be, in our case, bar over your head, elbows locked out. You know?
I just don't feel like I don't visualize that at all.
Huh.
I visualize like the part that's hardest for me, which is like off the floor.
Yeah.
How heavy it is, like in accepting like, hey, this is going to be this heavy. So
Yeah.
like be ready for that. And then just that, you know, right after the knee, like
Yeah.
everything that happens there and just like closing the gap and make sure everything's closed. Like those are the things that I think about. I guess because some people do have problems overhead. So that's not so much of an issue to me. Like, so I don't visualize. I mean, I'll visualize like, I don't even visualize. I just think to myself like, should I do a backflip afterwards?
Yeah.
But.
Well, I think the reasoning is I think this was in the book Psycho-Cybernetics that I was talking about, and they were talking about it in the context of golfers, and so. If you visualize the end result where you want the ball to go, let's say just for the example of golf, where you want the ball to go, and you visualize where it's going to go, even if you have suboptimal technical execution in your swing, positions are off, timing's off, whatever, if you hold the picture of the end result, where you want the ball to go, the body will like make all of it, subconsciously make all of the adjustments it needs to in order to create that end result. So I don't think the
this
actual
was in the
Psycho-Cybernetics, yes.
Okay, I gotta look into that because I feel like that's bullshit.
Sure.
But continue.
And so the body will make any adjustments. I talked to Billy about this too, and he actually agrees with me.
Okay.
Yeah. Because like there's so many compensations that the body can do to create a result, but like if you're thinking about every little piece of it, I think that's just like too complicated.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you're thinking about this in the context of weightlifting, if you think about the end result, bar over my head, arms locked out, then if my first pull is inefficient, or maybe I get a little bit off balance in the second pull or whatever, my body, like you've had lifts where you've had to make compensations in the middle or on the back end of the lift in order to save something, right? So I think it's possible that in that process, your body can make those adjustments, even that if you have like, if your technique is a little bit off, you know what I mean? And
Yes.
I would normally say that I think you're right if I didn't experience it myself at Masters Nationals. Like, it was spooky. I told Billy, I was like, it was fucking spooky how well it worked. Because I didn't visualize anything other than arms over my head, or a bar over my head, arms locked out. You know?
So immediately what comes to my mind is split jerking.
Sure.
Because you might disagree with me. Everything to me after the drive, which is like the bar's weightless.
Yeah.
You're off the ground. You're trying to like split. For people that split jerk, everything that happens after the drive is like doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like you just have to be an athlete.
Yeah.
Because anything can happen, right? It could be forward. It could be backward. So I don't think about that. I think about like the dip and drive, which is the golf swing.
Yeah.
All the mechanics have to be correct,
Right.
in order for you to even get to the point where you could be an athlete.
Sure.
So it's just that it's hard for me to imagine just the top end and me just holding the weight,
Yeah.
and then think like, hey, everything's just gonna go right. Like,
Well, I
the
mean,
dip and
but
drive.
at the point that you're on the competition platform, you're not thinking about your technique, right? You just have to trust that your body has accumulated all of the reps and all of the practice from months and months of training, and it just has to do it. So you're not, like, why would you visualize the technique if that's not, like, you're not going to do anything, like, you're not going to change anything there. You're not going to, like, elicit something different than what your body's been practiced to do over the last few months. Why wouldn't you just, like, picture the end result?
Okay.
Does
I'll give it a
sense?
try.
Okay.
It makes sense, but I always think of balance at my feet.
Sure.
Whenever I'm like,
But I think that's good.
I even sway a little bit back and forth just to make sure I'm
I think that's good
balanced.
to do in training, but we're talking about competition, right? Like, yeah, in training, you want to think about, like, all the different pieces and aspects so that you can make adjustments if you need to, right? If you need to maintain balance, a little bit better or whatever. I think it's important to visualize in training, like, different phases of the lift, but in competition, that's not, like, that's not where the work happens. That's like the end result of the work. It's like when there was one time, I think I was watching a live stream of, like, maybe it was like Masters Worlds when, like, Billy was competing in Orlando. I was watching the live stream, and there was one guy who was lifting. It might have not have been his session or whatever. It was just some part of the live stream. And I could hear his coach in the back, like, screaming the whole time, like, a million different cues, like, whatever it would be, like, straight torso, dip the knee, like, just essentially, like, nonstop screaming the whole time, like, all the way through the lift. And then he missed the lift, and I'm like, why, like, who is this coach, and why are they yelling these cues? That your athlete is not going to change anything at that point in competition. Yeah. Like, what does he need to be reminded of? Like,
I hate competition cues so much.
Yeah, it's just or coaches who want to try and like cue, like, very specific technical stuff in competition. Like, nah, man, you missed your chance. That is not the time to do it.
Yeah, I actually prefer it, like, even on heavy days or, like, competition days. Like, I don't want to really hear anything.
Yeah,
because I'm like, I'm just gonna try harder.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you only can get your athlete, if we're talking about a coach, you can only get your athlete to do what they practice to do. And so if that just means one or two key points that will help elicit that same quality, then that's all you can really do. But you can't start changing their, like, rack position. You can't start changing the speed of their dip and drive. Like, what? So that's why I feel like, okay, in training it would be a good opportunity to visualize the entirety of the lift, or maybe even just one phase of the lift that you want to focus on. But in competition, end result. That's it.
So that's all you think about, end result?
Yeah.
So we're doing visualization different then. But I haven't got to the competition stage. But, like, even on the platform here, just end result.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, in training, sure. Like, if you're working on something, like, technique-wise, sure, visualize that, what it would feel like, what it is that you're trying to accomplish. But maybe on the next, like, max out day, you should practice like try.
I'm going to visualize everything. Like I'm serious. Like that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
But obviously, like with the lighter weights, where you can just be like, turn it on to like. I got to this point too. Like, should I even visualize a bar warm up? Yeah. Should I do that? Because I'm like, that's autopilot.
Sure.
To me, I mean, like, 50 kilos on a snatch. I feel like.
You know what would be a cool experiment to like run like an entire bar warm up in your head, and then just start like snatching. You know. Like
with weight?
Yeah, like even like maybe just doing the whole bar warm up, but then like
do your warm up.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know. It'd just be fun, like.
But the body has to get warm.
I know. Some like some concept of that where you're like running through the warm up in your mind or something, right?
Interesting.
I don't know. I think.
What if you did that and then like, because that's the thing I'm hung up on, like the warm up, but I'm like the actual like getting your knees ready and shit.
Yeah.
Like I gotta put the bar on my knees in the middle of a squat to warm up. You know what I mean? I mean, like, I'm all about like specific warm ups, but then that's no warm up. That's like visually like just smiling on your bench like I did all that already.
Coach is like, "What are you doing? I'm warming up."
This dude's tripping. He fucking puts 100 kilo on. I did those already, Coach.
Well, didn't they have like? Isn't there research out there about like visualization in athletes? Like they had different people or different groups, either like playing like whatever, playing a game of basketball. Let's just use this example. I don't know if this is actually it. Playing a game of basketball versus visualizing them, or let's say like shooting free throws, like actually doing it, visualizing it, and then like maybe like a controlled group or something. Interruption.
Sorry. I don't know about that, but I think the difference would be that a basketball weighs nothing.
There you go. Fair. But I think there was like at least some measurable like outcome in terms of the group that only visualized, you know, like they had maybe just as much success as the group that did just did the free throws.
I would have been willing to do that on my deload day, but I did them both already. Oh no, we got deload for next week, right? Deload and heavy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do that. I'll do that on the deload day.
What, visualize the whole session?
I'll even visualize the boxes already there.
You still have to come in the gym though. I'm gonna make you come into the gym.
For what?
For the deload workout, but you don't actually touch a bar. You just visualize the whole thing.
No, I thought you meant visualize all the way to like your working set and then just jumping into your working set. Is that what you meant, or that's not?
Yeah,
what you meant?
I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know if that would actually work. It'd be a fun.
You want me to just sit there and imagine like the whole session?
Yeah.
And then just get back in my car.
You still have to come in though. You can't do it at home.
That was a tough one, Jen. You're tripping. I would not drive. I could do that in my bed.
I know, but I want to watch you sit here and visualize.
I just have like a smirk on my face. Yeah, it's great. And I'll be like, Jen, I just visualized 50. What'd you think?
And I'll be like, that was good.
Just all positive affirmation. Golly. No, I'm not doing that.
Okay, fine.
All right, anything else?
No.
I felt like I had a lot to get off my chest.
Yes, it felt like it. You almost died.
Yeah.
Been visualizing a lot. You're a rock climber now?
Yeah.
Man, lots changed.
I also saw Planet of the Apes, the new one that came out.
Okay. Was it good?
I love movies where animals can talk, man. It's
you
just
do
the
like,
best.
You do like talking.
Like I can't
animals.
like if Godzilla could talk, man, ratings would go through the roof. I swear.
That's hilarious. It was worth a watch.
Well, I love Planet of the Apes. Period.
Man, I haven't watched a movie in the movie theater. I mean, I can't remember the last time. Maybe like before COVID.
Let's go.
Actually, no, that's not true. Maybe
We'll go on like a $5 movie day.
Yeah.
I don't know if those exist anymore, but let's go to do that.
Okay.
That, and then I want you to go on that hike with me that I just went on, and I want you to rock climb with me.
my
but it
gosh.
won't be the whole hike, and it will be a very easy climb.
I was gonna say you're gonna have to go easy. Like,
No,
I
I really
believe
do
in my-
not want you to get hurt.
Yeah,
and
I
will
believe
never
in my
put you in it.
capabilities, but I definitely need.
Because I'm gonna guess you don't have rock climbing shoes, so
No.
I'm gonna only do hike or climbs that where you can do it on tennis shoes.
Okay.
My thing is I want you to stand on top of a rock and be like, damn, this is cool.
Okay. I am afraid of heights, but it'll be a good.
Are you
practice.
afraid of heights, or are you afraid of falling off the heights?
Yeah, falling off the heights. I think there was one. There was one time I went with my husband and his nephew to some playground or whatever when he was little, and we went to the playground. They had these little rock climbing holds and stuff just for fun, and I got so scared, even just not even 3 feet off the ground, I started getting freaked out. Yeah. I was like, wow, I can't believe how out of practice I am with kind of being up high.
Because you have rock climbed or what?
I've done bouldering before.
Okay.
Well, I mean, just out of practice and being up high places.
Got it. And if you're not into it, we don't have to do it. We'll just go for the hike. Yeah. I want you to bring food.
Okay.
Water.
Yeah.
Probably coffee for yourself.
Okay.
And we make it a day, because it doesn't have to be a day, but at least we'll get our steps in.
You're not gonna get us lost so that we have
absolutely
to call
not. I already know every single route on that fucking mountain now.
Okay.
And we absolutely will not get lost.
All right.
Promise.
I'm down.
Does it sound like a date?
Yeah.
All right, dude. That was a great one.
You're not doing an outro?
Oh. Wait. Dig it up the holes. Wait, you know that song?
What? No.
Oh, okay. So no. Let's see.
Okay, just end it.
I can show you the world. That does not. You don't come until way later. Shit, let's see. You sing a song.
What? I don't.
Hakuna Matata. Oh my god.
What a wonderful
And we're out.
Bye.